Hello and welcome back. Have you ever looked at something and thought, where in the good gosh darn fart knuckle did that come from? Well, I'm here to answer those questions for you, so sit back while I explain how we as human dude thins started using beds. So, rectangular sleeping prisons, or what we usually call them as beds, were much different than what we think of when we see one like this. In fact, to get in between the covers and the history of all of these things, we have to go all the way back to about 200,000 years ago. This is where bedding was typically just layers of grass and like insect repellent plants, but then they would also have ash layers underneath all of those, and with those things combined, it actually made a somewhat safe place to sleep because it was dirt free and kept away bugs. But realistically, you are just sleeping in a hole in the ground, so I'm probably going to give this bed a 2 out of 10 because it looks somewhat homey. Next, we're going to look at some good old European beds from around 2200 BC, which were actually found to be in northern Scottish villages. But I don't know if you can really consider this as somewhere to sleep, considering it was a boxed out piece of stone that was topped with either linens or animal skins. Granted, this is a major W for mankind, finally getting literally out of the mud and having some kind of blanket that you could probably shield yourself with throughout the night. All of this together actually also made a much neater option as well, because most homegoers would store their bedding in like these cute little cubbies when they woke up in the morning to ensure that their bed would actually stay clean. So with all of that, I would have to rate this bed like a 3 out of 10 because we finally started adopting that square shape that all beds have. Alright, keep holding my hand as we go around to the ancient Romans and about the 3200 BC area. This is actually where we started stuffing beds with feather, hay, and even wool, and sometimes had pillows for necks or backs, basically being the first common use of actually using pillows. And the funny thing is, Romans actually had many different beds for a variety of uses, like the common bed, which was basically only for sleep, and there was also the lovely marriage bed, which was highly decorated and only used for bumping uglies. Another classic one is the table bed, and yes, it's exactly how it sounds. They would use this bed as a dinner table for eating food on, or for even just having in open areas for a hangout space. But probably my most favorite bed is the Lectus Lumbratus, which, yeah, I know, that sounds kind of fancy, right? But it was actually just a bed that was meant for studying or leaving artistic projects on, and honestly, the Romans really kind of invented comfort when it came to beds, so I'd have to give it like a 5 out of 10. Now we flip over to some Egyptian beds, which most of these would actually have a canopy of bed sheets just kind of hanging above the bed, and it would be adorned with pillows or even a headrest, which, boy, I gotta tell you, these headrests do not look comfortable. Most of them were a half sphere made out of wood, stone, or metal, depending on somebody's wealth, but they all shared the same shape and purpose, and honestly, I gotta give these beds a like 4 out of 10, because I am for sure waking up with a headache after using one of those headrests. Have you ever seen this couch? No, not that one. This one. Yeah, okay. It probably looks like your grandma's couch, right? Well, it's not. It's actually a bed from the 12th century during the Middle Ages. This is really kind of the Renaissance of beds. Get it? Anyways. This is where we started to come up with our own element of making beds. Plus, this is the era of bedroom staples like rugs, dressers, 4-post bed frames, and even sloped frames for sleeping at an angle. But the sloped bed frames would actually start to fizzle out in about the 13th century, which after hearing that, honestly feels like my 13th reason. But this is also the first sign of starting to see beds that had cushions that were made of silk, with there being concepts of a mattress that would be topped by an actual comforter. This usually would be made of leather or linens, and the true sleeping ritual started to take place, as most people would start sleeping nude around this time, because they had no fear of any animals or bugs being able to get at them while they were asleep. But they also added in nice little attachments to the bed, like a nice little candle holder that would be in there so that you could read before sleep, which was very convenient, I suppose. And oh yeah, they were still using the canopy things, and honestly, with all of that combined, I'm gonna give this bed like an 8 out of 10. So imagine that you go to your friend's house for the day, and when it's time to go to sleep after a long day of playing games, he leads you to the guest room, and inside is this thing? Yeah, this is a 17th century bed, and honestly this actually looks really close to a lot of the common ones that are in present day. Granted, this was King Louis XI's bed, and he was the person that, you know, famously had a massive sniffer. But of course, this is also for the ruling class or the higher ups. A typical bed would actually be much skinnier and made out of something that was a lot cheaper, like a cheaper piece of wood or something else that was a shared material for the comforter. They would be embroidered with patterns or shapes, and honestly, with all of this together, this has to be the last incarnation of a classic modern bed before we started to kind of get into what we do nowadays. And I'm gonna have to give this resting place like a 9 out of 10. Not only do these blankets look amazing, but they have to be comfortable for people in the 17th century to actually be happy. But fun fact, if you try to search up 17th century blankets, you will only find loads of pictures of chess. But now I am going to list all of the different types of sleeping platforms that there are. So get ready. An adjustable bed, air bed, bassinet, box bed, brass bed, bunk bed, loft bed, captain's bed, camp bed, canopy bed, day bed, futon, four-poster bed, hammock, hospital bed, crib, iron bed, hang bed, stove, Shar Pei, morning bed, Murphy bed, ottoman bed, pallet bed, platform bed, rollaway bed, state bed, toddler bed, treadle bed, vibrating bed, and least but not the leastest, a waterbed. So when you go to sleep tonight, just remember that thousands of years of innovation and invention have actually gone into giving you the most comfortable and amazing sleep. If you enjoyed this video, please give that big like button a big old fat smack, and there will be very many more videos to become. So good morning and good night.